Shawn Diddy Combs used to be the guy who walked into a room and made everyone look twice. Money, power, fame. He had it all. But now, that same man is sitting behind bars, eyes empty, face sunken, denied a $50 million bail request, and facing a life sentence. It's wild how fast things flip when you've been skating on thin ice for years. This ain't just about some legal drama. It's about betrayal, ego, and karma finally catching up. And at the center of it all, Donald Trump. Let's rewind a bit. Not long ago, Diddy's team quietly reached out to the Trump administration behind the scenes, asking for something big, a presidential pardon. Yeah, the same Diddy who called Trump dangerous, started his own political party to get him out of office, and said publicly that white men like Trump need to be banished. But now that the heat's on and the feds have him locked down, suddenly he wants help from the same man he tried to bury. That's desperation, plain and simple. Trump, of course, didn't forget. He might smile for the cameras and speak in half sentences, but one thing about Trump, he holds grudges like trophies. When asked about the possibility of a pardon, he didn't say no outright, but he made it clear. Did he talk too much? Burn too many bridges? He was very hostile, Trump said. Said some not so nice things. That's Trump speak for you're dead to me. And just like that, Diddy's last lifeline vanished. Now, let's talk about the courtroom. Diddy's lawyers have tried everything to get him out on bail before sentencing. First, $1 million offer. Then 10. Now $50 million. They offered private security, house arrest, no internet, no phone, passport surrender, you name it. The judge shut it all down.
Why?
Because prosecutors painted Diddy as a serious threat to the community. Not just some rich guy with bad luck, but someone who's been using money and power to control, exploit, and silence for decades. And when prosecutors talk, the court listens, especially when they bring up a history of violence, witness intimidation, and a pattern of behavior too ugly to ignore. They told the judge that Diddy isn't just a man trying to stay out of jail. He's a flight risk, a manipulator, and someone who might hurt people if he gets out. That was enough to seal the deal. Then there's the new wave of lawsuits. Not just the original charges, which already landed him in deep trouble, but fresh civil cases from multiple women, including one who says she was a minor. One woman claims she was lured out to L.A. with a job offer, only to be held against her will for an entire weekend. Her story: assault, coercion, and trauma. And it doesn't stop with Diddy. His own son, Justin, is being dragged into the mess, accused of playing a role in what went down. So, while Diddy's defense tries to argue that he was just a John, someone who watched but never participated, the court isn't buying it. Prosecutors say he arranged everything, pulled the strings, paid for the freak-offs, and made sure everyone was drugged up and compliant. That's not just a passive role. That's the mastermind. With sentencing scheduled for October 3rd, the clock is ticking. No bail, no pardon, no exit strategy. Just a man who thought he was untouchable now staring down the possibility of dying in prison. What's next? That's the part that's got everyone watching. The streets are buzzing, not with hope for Diddy, but with a sense that justice might finally be catching up. The myth of the untouchable mogul is falling apart in real time. This isn't just about some court case. It's about years of whispered rumors finally finding their way into court documents. And now, with Diddy locked up, those whispers are getting louder. Inside Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center, Diddy is reportedly withdrawn, barely speaking, and fully aware that his empire is collapsing from the inside. The man once known for throwing million-dollar parties and commanding entire industries now gets told when to eat, when to sleep, and when to shut up. That kind of fall doesn't come easy, especially for someone who always believed he could talk or pay his way out of anything. Back on the outside, things are getting uglier. Prosecutors aren't just focused on his past crimes. They're going for the jugular. They filed new motions describing Diddy's behavior as a long-standing pattern of predatory control, using drugs, money, and manipulation to keep women in line. According to them, the image he sold to the world was just a mask, a cover for what really went down behind closed doors. They say he wasn't just watching those freak-offs. He was orchestrating every single one, from who got invited, to what went on, to how it was covered up afterward. They claim he drugged Cassie Ventura and another woman, Jane Doe, to keep them in a state where they couldn't say no. This wasn't some wild night gone wrong. This was a system, a cycle, one that Diddy ran with precision. And now, that system is unraveling fast. Meanwhile, Trump's comments about the case only added fuel to the fire. In one interview, he said Diddy might be sort of half innocent, but then immediately walked it back, admitting that Diddy had said terrible things about him during the 2020 campaign election. He called Diddy hostile and ungrateful. The subtext was clear. No pardon was coming. That was that. What's wild is that some people around Diddy had been banking on Trump's favor for years. There were rumors about him being an informant, feeding the feds intel in exchange for protection. Suge Knight even hinted that Diddy had government ties so deep he'd never do a day behind bars. And maybe that was true until it wasn't. Because once the evidence hit the courtroom, not even political connections could stop the storm. 50 Cent, of all people, played a surprising role here, too. Ever since talk of a potential pardon came up, 50's been on a mission. He's been digging up old interviews, resurfacing clips where Diddy called Trump dangerous and accused him of pushing America toward a race war. Every time Diddy's name was mentioned near the word pardon, 50 was right there to remind the world, and Trump, why that couldn't happen. If Diddy's empire was already bleeding, 50 made sure it bled out publicly. On top of all this, prosecutors are now pushing for a sentence far beyond what anyone expected. Federal guidelines originally suggested 4 to 5 years, but that's off the table now. The prosecution is asking the judge to go well beyond those limits.
Why?
Because they say Diddy lied, covered up violent behavior, and continued hurting people even after his breakup with Cassie in 2018. The image of a clean-cut businessman is gone. What's left is a man prosecutors say has manipulated the system for decades. Now that system is turning against him, and this time it might not let go. The October 3rd sentencing date looms like a storm cloud, and Diddy's legal team is scrambling. They've now pivoted to a new strategy, arguing that he shouldn't be held responsible because he wasn't the one physically involved in the act. Their latest claim: Diddy merely stood in the corner observing. He didn't touch, he didn't direct, he didn't force, he just watched. But prosecutors aren't buying it. They say the power dynamic alone makes that argument laughable. The money, the influence, the private jets across state lines. None of it was passive. And it's not just federal prosecutors digging deeper. Civil cases are stacking up like dominoes. One woman alleges that she was held prisoner for an entire weekend and assaulted repeatedly. Another says she was underage when Diddy began grooming her. Both stories are chilling, and while these cases are civil for now, the severity of the claims could lead to additional criminal charges. Every new lawsuit chips away at any chance of a public redemption. Even worse for Diddy is the growing list of people willing to testify. Some were part of his inner circle. Others are former assistants, ex-girlfriends, or victims who say they've stayed silent for too long. Their stories line up: a culture of silence, fear, and absolute control. Drugs weren't just part of the party, they were the tool, a way to keep people compliant. Allegedly, Diddy didn't just tolerate this, he engineered it. Still, his lawyers are pushing back hard. They've filed motion after motion, now even claiming that the Mann Act is being applied unfairly. Their stance: Diddy was a consumer, not a profiteer. The statute, they say, is meant for pimps, not clients. But prosecutors argue Diddy blurred that line. He wasn't just paying for services, he was orchestrating the whole show, arranging transportation, hotel bookings, and keeping everything under wraps. That's coordination. That's trafficking. Cassie Ventura, Diddy's most high-profile accuser, is staying quiet publicly, but her legal team isn't. They've submitted statements opposing bail, citing a real threat to her safety. Her friend, Deontay Nash, backed her up, telling the court that